Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our webinar today. Great to see so many of you joining with us for this session this morning. And as always, I can see people coming in who are familiar to this platform. Again, use the chat to say hello, drop hello wherever you are dialing in from across the globe today. We have got a fabulous session with our guest Erica Sosner, who I'm going to introduce in a few moments' time, and what today's session is all about. So great to see so many of you joining us this morning. So before we kind of hand over to Erica and kick off today's session, we've got our lovely Amanda Rosewarne with us to say hello. And just to give a brief introduction to today's session and about a fabulous member event that is coming up at the end of the month. So before we hand over to Erica, Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you all on what is now a bright sunny day where I am, and it's been absolutely tipping down for the last week or so. A big warm welcome to all of you. I can see nods and smiles. It's great to see you all, and also a big warm welcome to our members who haven't attended before previously. My name is Amanda Rosewarne, and we have run the Coach of Excellence accreditation now for the best part of 3 years, and it is slowly beginning to grow as its own community within the umbrella of the Professional Development Consortium and the CPD Standards Office. And we are delighted today to welcome Erica Sosner, who's going to deliver a fabulous session on key coaching conversations. But if we could just switch to the next slide, Drew, if that's okay. What we're focusing on is, as always, a real CPD session for you as trainers, as coaches, as online educators. Use the chat, as Drew said, to put comments, observations, queries in, and we'll be doing a roundup at the end for a specific Q&A with Erica. If you have any questions regarding your membership, assessment, you're paying your renewal subs, please send a direct message to our lovely colleague Kirsty Walker, who is also on the session with us. Message her directly and we can pick up from there. And I just wanted to draw your attention, if you're not registered already, to 2 events that are coming up. At the end of November, we are running an in-person event, yay, still, in central London, entitled Building a Busy Business. And we've got some great speakers, and it's very much going to be focused on how you, as the training and coaching community, can build and future-proof a profitable, sustainable business for the next year or so, particularly in the light of the current economic and political and social and climate environments, if you like, and ecosystems. So you can click the QR code there if you'd like to sign up. It's in the afternoon of Tuesday, the 29th of November, and you are all extremely welcome, and also to bring a guest. If you can't make it, that's no problem. You can attend the next session, which is a hybrid session on the 7th of November. And that's going to be an online version of the Building a Busy Business. So we will have some of the same speakers, some of the same sessions, but the ability for all of you to come along and enjoy and basically benefit from, you know, the expertise and the knowledge that we have within our community about how you can all be truly positive, truly successful, and get your message out there for next year. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce Erica to you all. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us, Erica. I'm very much looking forward to your session. So I'll hand over to you and look forward to hearing more.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Amanda and Andrew. Thanks for bringing all of that together. And welcome, everybody. I see we've got a real global audience, so very warm welcome from whatever time zone and location you find yourself in. I'm delighted to be with you today. It would be really useful for me in the chat to know a little bit about you. Are you a coach? Are you a trainer? Are you a bit of both? Do you run your own business? Are you in-house in an organization? Just give me a little commentary about you, because that really helps me to kind of tailor what we're going to share and what we're going to do today. So briefly, just a little bit about me. My background is in the leadership, engagement and careers consultancy space. I've been in that space for over 20 years now, and been a coach coming on now for 18 years, I think, something like that. I've always been very, very interested in work that works, you know, very kind of practical, human-centered tools and techniques that can immediately be integrated and applied into my own practice and shared with other people's. And so it's always nice to have a session alongside other professionals, because it's nice for me to be able to kind of give you, we can deep dive really quickly into what I've got to share and how you might get use of it, with a view to adding something to your backpack, you know, and to using your discernment to see whether what I'm sharing with you might be a useful addition to what you're doing and where and how it might sit. So I've been in this space a long time. I became particularly focused and interested on career dialogue and career navigation over the last decade or so. And my organization, we call Career Matters, work with a number of large companies all over the world to help them to have timely, personalized career conversations that help them co-design and navigate with their talent where they might take their career within that organization. And you can find out some more about that later when we send the deck and things like that. But I want to start with this number, really, the 80,000 hours number. So this is something we always start with when we're working with individuals and organizations, and it's on average the amount of hours that you will spend at work in a working lifetime, 80,000 hours. And that's very generously averaged out to address things like leave that you might take, holidays, academic qualifications you might acquire, etc. But broadly speaking, most of us working full-time will spend around 80,000 hours at work. And given that this is quite a large number, it's actually really surprising how little attention and how little strategy we have for making conscious decisions around the 80,000 hours. And if you look back through your own education, wherever it began and as it continues in the workplace, at school, university or college, at home, the absence of a kind of really clear framework for how to navigate the multitude of choices that are available to you in your career and align that with who you are and what you're about is, to me, a surprising omission. And it's really that started to make me curious about what could we do to alleviate that? What might it mean if people had a speedy toolkit to really be able to check in between who am I, what's my design, and where might that find fruit in the world of work? And so our session today is really about equipping you with some of the tools that we use day in, day out to initiate career dialogues and to explore what success and fulfillment in a career means to either an individual client that you're working with or to an audience of people that you're working with in a group session. And it's because you will spend more time at work than you will with the people that you love and care for the most. And so it is actually a very emotional issue. It's a very significant investment of time. We identify very strongly with what we say that we do, you know, in terms of our jobs and things. So it's really worth bearing in mind that investment and supporting people to feel confident about the ways they're investing that time. And of course, within the context that we're in now, there are some particular drivers around this that have fundamentally shifted at multi-generational levels how we position and think about our careers. So in the pandemic, we all had the opportunity to consider our mortality, to really focus in on what that vulnerability might mean, that we only have a certain amount of time in our lives. We don't know how long that time frame is, and we want to feel that that time is well spent. So people made and many people took the opportunity to reflect on, is my lifetime being well spent? And that consideration has, I think, become fairly integral, actually, into the dialogue around showing up at work, performance at work, finding alignment, making choices, jumping ship, pivoting direction, all of what we see happening around the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, etc. It's all about this question of my lifetime and the sort of clock ticking around that. On the back of that as well, we've also, of course, seen lots of mobility shifts. So first of all, it became easier to move because for many people, if you're just moving from one Zoom meeting to another, things around culture and conviviality and the spaces that you work in became less relevant for a time. And so that access to mobility became higher for people. We also continue to be in a fairly frothy job market. So recruiters in every industry that we work in, and we work across property and tech and real estate and finance, they're all saying it's really hard to hire people. It's really hard to keep people. Everyone is whispering it and saying just in our industry, but actually it's not just in their industry, it's everywhere. And we also have a core, at least in the UK, of over 1 million people between the age of 35 and 55 who have exited the permanent job market altogether. So there is also a gap between the opportunities that are available and the people willing and interested to fit them when it comes to full-time work. So you may find as a coach that a lot of your clients are asking questions about where do I go next? Maybe I want to do something completely different. And if you're working within an organization as a trainer, it's worth having this mindset about they are asking the question about how do I spend my time well? Is my time well spent here? Where else could it be better spent? And they are looking at the third point here. What are my metrics for measuring a fulfilling, successful, thriving life and work within that context? Yeah. So people have reframed fundamentally and become much more curious and demanding with themselves and with their employers about how do I know that this work is worthwhile? How do I know that I'm making the most of that time? And so this context is very important for the frame of the work that we're going to do in a moment, but just to kind of think about the fundamental shifts. And that's not, we're not going to go into, hybrid and universal basic income and all kinds of other interesting trends that are happening in the career space, but just these three really that pertain to who you're speaking to and who you might have these dialogues with and what might be on their mind. And very briefly, as an organization, it's perhaps useful for you to know a little bit about where I'm coming from. And really the ethos behind my work is that we exist to reunite people with their gifts so they can do remarkable things. And we use this word reunite because the world of work is changing so fast and mergers and acquisitions and new jobs and obsolescence and AI are meaning that people are getting buffeted. And we think that people do their ideal work when they are aligned with their gifts, when they know what their gifts and talents are, and they're using those in the right environment over and over again to become more and more masterful. And I know from my time as an engagement consultant that the top levers of engagement are things like playing to my strengths, more opportunities to do what I do best, interesting and meaningful work. And for each of us, the definition of what is interesting, what is meaningful, will be different. Yeah. So our work here today is really about this tightrope walking in a sort of buffety environment of staying true to who I am and what I'm really marvelously good at and what I care about and I'm interested in, so that I can continue to add the maximum value to the organizations and the teams and the clients that I serve, but also so that I'm true to what's interesting and relevant to me. And in some cases, people may have been pigeonholed, or they may feel like they've got to the goals that they were interested in and they need a new threshold. So for a variety of different reasons, people need this reunification process and they need tools to be able to do that. So just give me a sense in the chat of whether that makes sense, whether you've had that experience with clients, this sense of a reunification and reconnection to currently who am I, what matters in my work, and then how might I use that insight to translate into adding value. Just let me know if that all makes sense. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you the model that we use, the career equation, for how you might drive a career dialogue. and to start it in a very, very simple way. So kind of 3 conversational starters that build on each other that you can use individually or in a sequence and see what happens. And I'm going to give us an opportunity to play with some of it as well. So I'm going to invite you to answer some of those questions as we go along, and to start already making connections about where and how this might sit within learning designs that you have, within frameworks or arcs of coaching that you might do, or within just one very specific conversation or moment in time. So we'll explore that together and see what we all come up with. And really, I want to convince you over this time that we have that conversations around career can be easy. They can be really rewarding and fulfilling and connecting and energizing, and incredibly valuable for whoever it is that you're speaking to, both because the amount of time they're investing in their career is considerable, also because that matters to them. You know, we all want to be doing remarkable things. We all want to feel like our work counts and it feels like progress to us. But also, if you work within an organization, to really understand how this can fundamentally drive internal mobility, retention, performance, engagement, successful recruitment, good job fit, and a number of other things. And if you're working as a coach, and perhaps working with more clients within, you know, independently, to also be able to add this into your toolkit as and when it pops up as a relevant consideration for a client. And so often it's just useful to have something up your sleeve that you feel at ease with. So I'm very interested to share this with you. So we all want to be talking about our 80,000 hours. And fundamentally, if people aren't talking in their organization about where they're going, then recruiters in the competition are talking to them. So this is really a really important frame for those of you coaching internally or designing programs for organizations, to really think about that the locus of the conversation should ideally be within the organization that the person is in. Yeah, because people will talk about their careers, but if they can't see a future in the organization and the organization is not actively helping them to own and drive and talk about their career within that business, they will start talking elsewhere. And that's where the risk around flight risk comes in. Now, if you're a coach working independently, that may be less of an issue or concern for you, but it's worth bearing in mind that one of the things you might want to ask your client is, have you had a conversation within the organization that you're in already around your career? Because it's often something that actually, if it hasn't been initiated by the business, may not have been started by the individual either. So just a useful frame. People want to talk about it. And people also are quite reluctant to engage with digital tools or further training, or go to a careers library until they have had a conversation about it. And that's why initiating some of that conversation, being the person that people can really share and get clarity around, is so important, because action follows clarity, doesn't it? Once we know what it is that we want to achieve, then taking action around that feels much more simple. And because of this absence of a structure for a dialogue, many people are just overwhelmed by the amount of choices and decisions they need to make in their career. So, you know, if I were going to choose a word, an ethos that underpins how we take forward the career equation and embed it in terms of philosophies in organizations, I would use this word, which is care. You know, how do we help people to really feel cared for? How do you in your life know that you're being cared for? Usually it's about being connected to, being understood, being remembered, having people be curious about you. So in a very fundamental way, these questions and inquiries into people's career are going to have a beneficial effect, not just in terms of their clarity, but also in them feeling cared for by you, attended to by you. And of course, you'll already be bringing a lot of that in your intentionality in the dialogue that you're having and the contracting that you're engaged in. And so this is just very much in complement to the work that you will already be doing around caring for another person. And when it comes to careers, it is now personal. What that means is that when in in dialogue around work, much of the time that we spend is like, how's your work going? What are you up to? What projects are, so that's kind of I call chit chat. Then we got information sharing, which is, okay, this project's up to here, or we met this deadline, or we exceeded this budget. Then you've got opinion, which is, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable about, I'm feeling worried about, I'm feeling excited about, I'm concerned about. And, those will tend to take up a little bit less of the airtime. But top of the triangle, and you'll notice the resonance with Maslow's hierarchy here, is connection, self-actualization, sharing who I am and what I'm about with another person. And this sort of icing on the cake, if you like, of the relational levels around work is, a smaller segment of the time that we spend, but it's also a deeply valuable and important part of the time that we spend. And the questions I'm going to share with you today are all about connection starters. They very quickly take you to an accelerated level of intimacy with somebody without an experience of discomfort or sensitivity around that. They are very open questions that can take you to all sorts of interesting places, but they will move into connection very quickly. And that's part of the benefit of them. We're not going to spend all of our time at work or in dialogue necessarily at that intimate level of connection, but we need to be able to go there in order to get the insight that people are looking for around their careers and the personalization of a plan or a goal that might follow from that. And just final thing in terms of philosophy before we hit the road in terms of some activity is, at Career Matters, this is how we define a career: a series of choices, not just one, but many, where we explore, how do I align my gifts, who I am, how I'm designed, with how I spend my time and how I make my money. A career is a series of choices where you explore how to align your gifts with how you spend your time and how you make money. And this is an important preamble, I think, because our work is really about gaining insight about how people create and learn from the experiences of exploring this alignment. And as long as we keep supporting our clients to make informed choices and to explore and reflect what comes out of them, and for them to know that there is more than one choice available and that they can choose again, the more permission we have to really explore what that alignment's going to look and feel like. And notice that I don't say anything about profession, and I don't say anything about the ladder of seniority. And that's very deliberate. The 21st century world of work is about exploring alignment between the inside and the outside. And the title or profession that may exist in the outside that might meet that inside may be multitudinous, varied, may not even have a name yet. And my prediction is that the future of work is going to be about the co-creation of job descriptions and job titles, with something of an obsolescence of the idea of a job and a title that we all understand. We already have that, So if you go into your head and you draw up a picture of what a doctor does, there we go. If I ask you what a gardener does, there you go. If I ask you what an international product manager does, a little bit vaguer, So, and even within an organization, product manager may mean completely different things. And they may be involved in completely different technologies, for example. So this is why the frame really is about exploring what's inside the person, getting really clear and defined with them about what the gifts are that they want to be using at work. Because you might have all sorts of talents you don't actually want to bring into the workplace. And then to go, how can we support you in achieving a level of mastery around that feels like a pleasure, where your time is well spent, both for you and for the person, the organization or the product that gets the benefit of that time. And for me, success, however an individual defines it, but also the kind of more traditional, financial stability, seniority, status, those things, they also fall from doing this work first. Does that make sense? Yeah. So first of all, let's work on the self-understanding, the definition and the alignment. Then let's find the place where you can maximally align those two things. And then some of the other pieces will definitely follow, but they'll follow from a position of empowerment and joy and pleasure. Yeah, not just moving straight from, and we quite often hear this in younger generations, how can I make the maximum amount of money or get promoted to the most senior level, which skips out the whole middle of this section of this definition. So let me know if that makes sense to you, and if it makes sense to you in your own career. Have you had this experience in yourself of making a series of choices where you're trying to find that alignment? Excuse my cold, I'm sorry, it just keeps on going. And lastly, most importantly, an individual owns their career. No one will ever know better than you what is the right decision for you. Yeah, and really making sure that we put our clients in that position of true empowerment that says, you're the expert on you. You're the expert on which elements of your skills and talents you want to be growing and emphasizing over the coming years. You're the expert on the kind of environment that supports you to do your best work. You're the expert on what your next stretch might be. Can I support you in building that insight, building that perspective, helping you to advocate for that, structuring your time around it, being a devil's advocate or a provocateur? Of course I can. Of course I can. But the ownership is yours. You are the expert on you. And this is, again, a very important component, particularly when we work in organizations where there can be a little bit of a kind of paternalistic or sort of parental culture that says, you work it out for me, you spot where I should go next. And we really want to move away from that, whether we are the coach engaged in the dialogue or the manager or the talent manager or whatever. So they own it. But of course, clarity follows action. So to your point, Emma, absolutely. I'm going to show you how they get to clarity, right? Because it's been very difficult to know what to do if you don't know what to do. See what I mean? So that's really what we're going to explore and tease out through some very simple questions here. So fundamentally, my work, what I am interested in as a coach, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, is how do we support people to thrive? And how do we define what thrive looks and feels like, given that each of us have different skills, different interests, different talents, different motivations, different personalities, different aspirations, and that even if we could download those at a moment in time, if you ask me 2 years later, they might look a bit different. So how do we support this individualized, personalized engagement around thriving in your work? And how are we able to quickly laser into that in a way that allows us to take some action, supportive, and have some supportive conversations around it? So I'm going to show you. You know, I was once told exactly this statement, and it was so helpful to me, which was, where you look is where you go. And the story around that was that if I am asking, why is my life not working, or why are things so dreadful, then I might get an answer around that just focuses on the answer to why it's dreadful right now. Whereas if I ask the question, how might life be better, or how might I be able to, where else would I like to be in relation to this, then I get a different set of answers. And neurologically, our thought process is a series of questions. We're always asking ourselves questions. And so when it comes to career, supporting people to really be able to define, what am I looking for? What experiences do I want to have? What's my direction of travel? Is incredibly helpful. But one of the questions that we've really got burdened with in this is something like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Which is a horrible question, because not only is it completely uncontrollable where the world is going to be in 5 years' time, but also if I don't have an answer, I feel like I've perhaps failed already in the conversation. But nevertheless, it is useful. It's a useful insight to say, where do you want to, what's the next threshold for you? And so fundamentally, the questions I'm going to introduce you to now are all about, how can we define where we want to go to in a way that a coach or a manager or a team developer could align with me around, could understand and support me, yeah, but without putting people under pressure to have said something that then produces an expected answer like, your job or being a director, yeah, which actually isn't in itself as rich a response as we could get. So this is the way that that we think about it. And this is the career equation. The career equation is a word equation. So for those of you who thought, oh, but I hated maths at school, don't worry, it doesn't at all impact. You can just think about it as 4 different aspects, if you like, of careers. So over thousands of conversations, over at least a decade of coaching many people all over the world, I discovered that there were basically 4 variables, 4 buckets, if you like, by which they assessed if their work was working for them, if they felt like they were thriving in their work. And that's really what the equation is. And it's also based on the fact that choice theory says that more than 5 parameters becomes overwhelming. More than 5 variables when you are trying to decide on your cereal flavor or size or whatever in the supermarket can overwhelm you. So I thought, well, I'll stick to 4. And the 4 are this. People feel like they're thriving in their work when they use their natural skills and strengths. You know that, that's not interesting. You know that already, yeah? So we want people to play to their skills and strengths, but we want them to combine it, to add it to a subject that they feel interested in, or a way of being that feels good to them. Yeah. So we use the word passion. And what we mean is either a subject matter that really floats your boat, you really just love being involved in, or a way of being that gives you a lot of energy. So for me, for example, I love sharing ideas or making connections with people, and learning new things. Yeah. So it might not be specific to a subject matter. It might be a way of doing or being that really gives them energy to their battery. Yeah. So applying your skills to something that gives you energy and vim and pleasure, and creating an impact, a result that is meaningful to you as an individual, that has meaning. Yeah. So the way in which we measure and define success will be different for each of us. But broadly speaking, impacts are both meta and micro, if you like. So on the micro level, a person will say, being recognized for what I do, being seen as a thought leader, creating financial stability for my family, getting to work on the cutting edge to solve X kind of problem. And then on a meta level, they may be talking about contributing to something larger. So for example, I might say supporting people to find their next role in their organization. Now, I'm not totally in charge of that, but I might participate in that. Yeah. So we want to use our skills, ally them to something we care about, and deliver a result that is meaningful for us. And those 3 things tell us a bit about who the person is. But the 4th element that's often overlooked is in what kind of environment do they do their best work? Because we've all had the experience of being a square peg in a round hole, right? You've looked at a job description, gone, that should be perfect for me. That really looks like me. And then you come into that environment and somehow the environment doesn't suit you. Yeah. So we think about that like a plant and its soil. If we want to support people to really be successful in their work, we both need to understand what kind of plant you've got in front of you, but you also need to understand where to plant it. Yeah, what kind of soil, what kind of sun, what kind of shade. An environment can be anything from, of course, the culture, the leadership, the values of an organization, to the quality of the coffee or the speed of the IT, or how often you get to travel, or is it a hybrid working environment? How formal is it? Are you outdoors? Are you indoors? So really anything that is environmental. And environment really is like the petri dish in which everybody sits, yeah? So in which they are cultivated. So this 4th component is really, really important. And I often say environment makes the difference. So when you're thinking, the first sort of takeaway really is when you are thinking about a client or thinking alongside a client around their career, these 4 components are the things you want to be keeping track of. To what extent are they using the skills and talents that are important to them right now? To what extent do I understand, or they understand, what gives them pleasure and energy? To what extent are we able to agree on what their metric for a successful life is right now? What are they measuring? What are they keeping score on? And then to what extent do we know what environment fits them best? Small company, large company, international PLC, local private firm, varied range of projects, specialist area. I'm being polarized about it, but just to give you, you know, the spectrum on which they may be on and the considerations that they may have. So the equation is about making this discernment and conversation really easy. So just give me a wave if that is making sense, and you could see how you can immediately use just that quadrant of thoughts to help to frame and organize what people are talking about when they say thriving, enjoying, loving my work, feeling like it's worthwhile. Just let me know in the chat if that makes sense. So it should, yeah, thanks Libby, it should make it easy, yeah, for them to define what is ideal for them and the environmental factors that they need to be considering. And on the back of that, they can do all kinds of interesting stuff, right? So I could take those insights and then go, to what extent is the current role I'm in matching up with this? Yeah. Where's the tweak? You know, if I was going to change just one aspect of my work, would it be skills, passions, impact, environment? What would it be? So then I can start a conversation around that. Or I could ask myself, on the back of this, how could I do more of this? Yeah, more of these things. What would the next threshold look like if I did that at a more advanced level? And if I don't know the question, who could I ask to say, I'm someone who's interested in talking and sharing information and ideas, and I'm passionate about bringing practical education methods to people, and I measure my results by how many people, you know, mobilize and make moves within our organization. Where should I be putting myself? Yeah, that kind of thing. Okay, so there are lots of different ways that just the insight from immediately the conversations around the equation can help. But briefly, 3 questions then that just support you to build on the understanding you now have. So we've gone, why is this important? Because people spend 80,000 hours and they don't have a framework. What would the framework be? The career equation is your framework. Yeah. And now I'm going to teach you, now you've got the career equation bobbing around in your head, here are 3 really simple questions that you can immediately use to embed into your approach. Number 1, the answer to the question of the equation is, the question we're asking is, how do you define success? Yeah, so this is a brilliant opener. And actually, I'd love you to answer it in the chat for each other. How do you define success in your career? Because this question opens up so much about what matters to a person. Yeah, so if I were to answer it for myself, how do I define success? I would say a couple of things. I'd say having like flexibility and freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. That's a big driver for me. Secondly, feedback from organizations, feedback from individuals, feedback from people who've read my books. And thirdly, constantly innovate, feeling like I'm always on a learning edge. I'm proud of what we've accomplished and what I've accomplished, but I'm always interested in like the even betters. You know, how do I continue to be on that edge and feel alive? Yeah. So great. So Pete said, making a difference is my measure. Yeah. Andy, clients achieving their goals. Peter, working towards something worthwhile and continuing to grow. Beautiful. So you see, just from looking at the chat, how varied the response is. Yeah. How personal the response is. And to set us off on the course of being curious about, so Lorata, freedom to think creatively and implement ideas. So I'd love to say, you know, then I'd ask, say some more about that. Tell me about a time when you were, you know, thinking creatively and implementing ideas. What gets in the way of that? To what extent do you do that right now? Yeah. So it's a great opener on which to follow with all of your good coaching questions to help to generate that insight for the individual. Yeah. How do they measure? How do they define what success is and how do they measure it? So Andrew, you said something that makes a difference, whether it's an idea, a strategy, or a way of working. And the next question I would ask is, how do you measure it? How do you know that it's making a difference? What measure do you use? And are those measures visible just to you? Are they a felt sense? Are they trackable in terms of ROI? Again, just gets you into being alongside your client and getting in their shoes about what is it they're looking at when they are tracking their performance in work, or when they are tracking their legacy and their impact in work. And notice that all the different angles of the equation can be explored within this, right? So they will start with one of them. So Susie talks about positive feedback. That's how I'm defining success. So she's talking about an impact measure. Yeah. Are there elements of feedback for what? Yeah. Which are there particular kinds of feedback that matter more to Susie than others? Will tell us a bit more about environment. It will tell us a bit more about her passions. It will tell us a bit more about her skills. So it's a really potent little question once you know that you're underpinning it with the equation. So good, that's question number one. And you're already seeing, I hope, from the chat and from the variety of responses that you got, how rich this particular question can be. And I'd love to know if you're having any thoughts already about where might I use this? How might this help me as a coach? Just adding this in to your range of the questions that you already use as tried and tested deep dives with clients. So question number one is, how do you define success? Question number two is a more experiential version of that. What experiences are you looking for in your career? So again, bearing in mind the philosophical point of view I gave you around careers, where we say it's a series of choices where you're exploring how to align your gifts. Again, with the equation as a basis, you can now say, okay, how could we support somebody to have more of thriving in their career? Well, we do that by exploring with them what kinds of experiences do they want to have in the future, because where they look is where they go. That's useful for both them and us, whether you're working within an organization or whether you are working one-on-one with a relative level of confidentiality and privacy. Either way, it's really useful to be able to look together at what do you want to experience? And what do you want to experience is, I think, a better version of the question, where do you want to be in 5 years? Which is actually what where do you want to be in 5 years is kind of asking, but not as well, I think. To really go, what's that next level? What's that next frame? And in fact, perhaps you'd all like to answer that. What experiences are you looking for in the next stages of your career? Over the next year or two, what experiences would you like to have? So again, if I give you some examples from my own life, I'd like to continue to experience speaking to large groups of people, and actually going back onto stages and speaking to large groups of people is something I haven't done for ages, and it's so exciting and buzzy to be in a space with real people in real time. That's one of the experiences I'd like to have. Another experience is I really want to see, we're working on an app at the moment, particularly focused on youth. And I would really like to have the experience of focusing our attention and seeing what happens when we bring the equation to under 25s, an audience we haven't worked with much recently. What are those things for you? Yeah. So notice that some of them easily translate into goals. Yeah. So Andy said working with people from other cultures, right? So we could easily set a career goal around that experience. Or I said, I want to speak on more stages. We could, again, put a goal around that. And some of it may also be more of a felt sense, like, for example, feeling more confident when I'm speaking in public. Yeah. Or, I don't know, being more recognized for the work that I do. Yeah. So again, it helps us start to tease out which elements of the equation are being met, where is the opportunity to amplify. Yeah, so maybe publish a book, get back to writing, having more experiences of the written word for me. Yeah, so notice how before we get into goal setting, this gives us, what are they excited about? Like, what would be meaningful for them? And so often within career goal setting or development planning within an organization, it's just limited to like getting to the next level or layer, rather than expanded to what experiences do you want to have? Like, oh, I'd really like to work with that sexy bit of tech that they've got going on over there, or I'd really like to be involved in a multi-dimensional different geos project instead of being just UK focused, for example. Yeah, so it's a great question to tease out the latent capacity and curiosity of the person in front of you. And to build on that, because you now understand the equation, here are 4 little sub questions that relate specifically to the experience they want to have, but building on the equation, right? So you've got, what are you really good at? Skills. Yeah. What do you want to do more of around those? Those are skills questions. What do you love? What gives you pleasure? What do you really enjoy? What do you lose track of time doing? What can't you help yourself but do? We'll tell them about the experiences around passion. Yeah. Do they need to bring more juice in somehow there? How do you measure success? How do you define success? What we ask, but then how are you measuring it? How are you keeping score on it? Can help you with the impact piece. And then what helps you to be at your best, or something like, where do you do your best work, or what kind of environments do you feel you really thrive in? What do you need to feel successful? Will give you more insight about the experiences they want to have in terms of the environment. So me saying, really, it's not about the big stages and the number of people in the audience. It's about the physical reconnection of being out in the world. That's the bit that is really exciting for me. So again, it helps you to tease out what matters most to the person who's in front of you. Yeah. So Peter's got, I want to have a more digitally nomad lifestyle, right? Which leads us nicely into question number 3, which is, how can I help? Yeah. So on the back of, how do you define your success? What experiences are you looking for that would move you closer towards touching that in a variety of ways? Then we go into planning. So how can I help you with that? What are you thinking about? What would be most useful in the time we have left in this session to support you with your plan for a digital nomad lifestyle? And then we go, tell me where you are, we go into grow or wherever you want to go to. But each of these provide both a really valuable preamble to all the good work that you do as a coach, but they also work really nicely as standalones. You can just pull out, how are you measuring success in your career right now, as just a 5-minute laser coaching opportunity with somebody, in a way that will allow them to experience that personalization, that care, and accelerate their thinking so that they have a framework, the equation, and the subsequent questions that allows them to quickly define what are the criteria for assessing an opportunity. So multiple benefits. I'll open up to questions in a moment. We can talk a bit more about the details of this, but are that, first of all, the questions help you just check your assumptions. You get diagnostic forms from people. You might have done various profiles and assessments. Let me just check that what I think I'm seeing here, or, that this person is an ENTP or whatever, what does that actually translate to in front of the person I've got in front of me? And also, if you've known them for a while, let me just check the assumptions that I may be holding that may have been true a few years ago, but may not be true for them now. Secondly, if you're giving feedback to them and supporting them in building their plans, you can really hone that on the back of the definitions of the answers to the questions. Yeah. So once you know what their direction of travel is, once you know what they want to experience, once you know what gets in the way environmentally, you can really support them to ask good quality questions that relate to that in an interview they might be in, or to influence around the kind of environmental factors that might be slowing not just them, but other people down in the organization, or being able to advocate for or develop the skills that they feel passionate about. So it really allows you to be more influential in a more informed way in relation to what matters to the person in front of you. And therefore to find, if you are, I know some of you are in training firms or running training, to find the right development or to build the business case for why the development that you're offering really aligns with what it is that they want to do, doing it from that personalized perspective of their own self-insight. So I'll pause here. It's always a rattle through it now, but I'll pause here because I'd love to know your thoughts and questions around this. And just to say that it works across all levels of the employee journey. So whether you're working with apprentice community, senior leaders and partners, managers, high potentials, returners, the same tools apply. One model works for all.
Fabulous, Erica. So relatable, and as you were going through the presentation there, the chat was going bonkers with people acknowledging and confirming and relating to examples, not only to themselves but to their coaching practice and perhaps some of their clients and their audience. So really, really great stuff, and how you've done a deep dive into the neuroscience of all of that. I think this next bit now in this Q&A, let's come off the chat and let's go a little bit interactive. So I think the best way to manage this is let's use the reactions. If you've got a question or something that you want to dive in here with Erica, just raise your hand and we'll manage it from there. And I think we'll go a little bit interactive at this point rather than using the chat. But Erica, great stuff, love it. And as you were going through it, I was literally related to myself, that whole career equation, and how sometimes that we forget that environmental piece that kind of underpins, you know, the skills and the passions of what it is that we do. So let's go to the floor. Anybody got? We've got. Is that Nana?
Yeah, Nana. Yeah.
Nana, if you'd like to go, come off mute. Over to you.
No, I was only saying well done to Erica, just saying thumbs up and clapping.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate your feedback. I think Peter's got his hand up. I can see Peter over here. Peter Johnson. Hi.
I have. Hi. A quick question. How do you think this relate, or what are the differences between Gen X, millennials, baby boomers and so on, any major noticeable trends that you're spotting over the last year particularly? I obviously fall into the latter of those categories I mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about this piece, but a couple of things might be interesting. One is that when you're talking about the younger generations, what I'm describing here is expected as a norm. It's not extraordinary. It's not a surprising and innovative provision by an organization. It's just expected. Like that, you know, they really do expect that people take a very personal interest in who they are and what they're about and help them figure stuff out in this way. And I'd say, just jumping to the other end of the generations, we run a program with one of the biggest real estate firms with their very senior leaders, many of whom have really long tenure in the organization. And so at that end, thinking about the later stages of your career and the extended quality of life and opportunities that we have, it can be really daunting when you've, for the first time, got to think outside of the box of the organization that you've been in. And I always say to them in the best possible way that they are institutionalized. You're still, if you've been in an institution for a long time, you are institutionalized, whether, you know, and we have negative associations with that, but it's actually, you know, you've loved the place you've been in. So thinking about career transitions as you move into later stages of life and making informed decisions that are person-centered can be just as new and daunting, despite being a titan in your industry and having loads of experience, whatever, as it can be making a decision for the first time. So, I mean, there's loads more to say about the bit in between, but I hope that's a good starter for 10.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just follow on with an additional quick question relating to that? You mentioned the paternal nature of some organisations, which is almost expected. Certainly I've met a large number of people who are sort of middle-aged and older, where there's that full expectation that the employer provides all their own developments, so much so that people don't read a book a year to help their own development.
Yeah.
Is that also true of the much younger generation, where they are clearly taking a much stronger role in the mobility? If they're not happy where they are, they'll happily move. But are they also taking the responsibility of investing in their own career, or do they still expect the employer to be that parent providing the education?
I think it's really hard to generalize. I don't feel like I can answer that in a way that would really be like factually correct yet. But what I would say is that one of the things I do notice with Gen Zs in particular is that they're very hungry for personal development and kind of transformatory experiences. So in that way, they are swottier, I think, because of that greater sense of demand around what they want to experience in their lives. They perhaps are a bit more disposed to being curious about how they could get that than perhaps other generations which felt less of a sense of the opportunity to choose what was really right for them, or to make a new decision, quite often felt significantly riskier. So I think just because of the disposition, and you see that again with things like, for example, alcohol and drug use and things like that, that you've got quite a responsible sort of generation that is quite diligent about making best use of my time and energy. Whether that will translate always into reading specifically or accessing development, it certainly does translate into the curiosity and the value of these kinds of conversations. And those things may well follow with greater appetite once they've had this kind of conversation.
And therefore, potentially, they are open to a much more coaching approach.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think there's a real expectation and an appreciation. So I know that I saw someone else here is in the mentoring space, like that as well is really kind of valued and sought out. I think people are much more comfortable in these new generations to go, yeah, I'm really interested in how you can help guide me to make the most of myself. And that isn't experienced as a vulnerability. And again, these are very broad generalizations, but in some of the organizations that I work for that have a more established workforce, it can be perceived to be a vulnerability to say, I'm interested in coaching, I'm interested in finding out more about me. They don't have that self-consciousness.
Lovely. Thanks for some great answers. Thank you.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Drew, I saw that Emma also, when she described her organization at the beginning, sort of asked something that I think could be quite interesting for others, which is how to understand how to engage with new clients. One of the things I wanted to say about the equation that's really powerful is that it lends itself to great discussions about your clients themselves, right? So as an organization, how would they describe their environment and getting the best out of their people, or, you know, where they want to move their environment from and to, what are their natural strengths? What is everyone excited about? Yeah, so you can also use it as a framework for some more organizational inquiry about what helps this organization to thrive, and that can be quite valuable in a consultative conversation as well.
Fabulous, excellent. Anybody else got anything for Erica? Jules, I can see you've gone virtual rather than the digital button.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. I did ask it in the chat, but there are two things that come up. One is, let me see what I put. One is when people are brand new and they just don't know what they don't know, and they're often pressured to find the direction in an organization and they just don't really know yet. And I know whatever's in the way is the way, but I'd love to hear from Erica what you suggest. And there's a second part of this as well.
Yes, and I've just scrolled up, so I found it. So I'll answer both of them. They're really good questions. Thanks, Jules. The first thing, we do a lot of work with early careers, graduate schemes, apprenticeships, and even outreach now with schools looking at attraction of non-traditional talent into a variety of different industries. The good thing about the equation is that it helps you to make the connections for them and helps them to go and be proactive about it. So what we're doing with under 25s, when we're working with an adult who's working with them, is to say, these are the three questions still apply. How do you drill into defining what success looks and feels like for them and what they do know about who they are? Because yes, they might not know the industry, but they are still the expert on them. Yeah, so they, you know, if you ask them, what are your kind of natural skills and talents, or I quite often ask, what do your mates say you're really good at, or what do people always go to you for? That allows them to have a sense of, oh yeah, I am the authority on that. I do actually know, you know, people always ask me to, I don't know, organize their gigs and weekends away, whatever the thing is, that starts to get into their sort of fundamental character traits. So you can use the equation to pick up and start a dialogue. And actually, we've got some free sessions running for the rest of the year for anyone who is working with under 25s. If you go to the website, there's I'll send a link actually, if I might, Andrew, because they're free sessions on working with under 25s very specifically. But once they've got the clarity about the kind of experience that I want to have and the skills I want to use, then getting them to go, either if they're working with you in your industry to go, okay, if you're that kind of person, here's 5 job titles that you should definitely look into and learn a bit more about, because then they feel like that's aligned. Again, it's customized to them. But if you're not the expert in that, say it's, I don't know, you're not an engineer, you're a recruit, you're in talent and you don't necessarily know, like, to then equip them with the question to go and ask of the engineering community. Yeah, because once they are able to say something more personalized about, I love working with this kind of thing in this kind of way, and I really like using my math skills in this particular area, then someone who does know about that field will be able to help them much, 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 much more. Yeah. And it also means that when they go to things like careers fairs and trades fairs, they can have a much better quality dialogue instead of just picking up some leaflets and shuffling off to the next stand. They can actually say, I'm this kind of person, I know I like these kinds of things. Where in your company might I find a home? And that helps them to do their own research and to be proactive about that. And then performance related issues where someone doesn't show an interest in specific direction of travel. Yeah, so like, we did a lot of work with one of the staff population in one of the universities where we had really long tenure and people sort of overstayed and got a bit stale in their jobs. Partly it was because if any of you work in higher education or the civil service, you'll know that the application process is a nightmare. So leaving your job is, a full-time job to fill in all the forms. But it was also about helping people to get reignited and reconnected. So how I said we focus on reuniting. One way or another, they have disconnected from what matters to them. Either they never made a choice around that, or nobody ever asked them, or they decided it was impossible, or it looked like the right fit some years ago, but they've outgrown it. So your diagnostic work is to suss out what is it that's disconnected here, and how do we find the reconnection? And again, the equation supports you in that. Just be curious around those questions and see what then comes clear. And I can tell you that at the university that we worked at, we had a lot of success, like people contacting us with things we never expected, like that they had skipped 2 or 3 grades, which was absolutely unheard of, or that someone had created a role for them based on the insight that they had got. So when people are reconnected, they're put back in their plug. If they are underperforming or burnt out, or they are in some way disconnected from what makes them them, and your job is to pop the plug back in. So I hope that helps. And come to one of the free sessions. I'll send a link for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I think Karen's got her hand up.
Karen.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Thanks, Erica. I'm actually calling in from Seattle. It's 4 o'clock in the morning here, and this is probably the best hour I've spent. So I wanted to thank you so much for this talk. It's been enlightening and sort of reframing. I'm a physician. I work in medicine. I coach academic physicians. And I'm sort of curious, what do you do when the environment is fairly restrictive? And even if you move from one healthcare organization to another healthcare organization, the same, especially now post-pandemic, the same restrictions are there. So, I mean, I'm loving this method and thinking of the ways to use it. And yet the people I work with are sort of mired in this sort of, there is only one way.
Yeah.
And obviously they love medicine, they want to do that work, but I mean, figuring out how to adapt, but within the very restrictive environment, and any tips around that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I mean, I think that there are professions and industries that have really strong constraints around the environment, and that the environment has enormous challenges or toxicities. The health service, I talk to a lot of doctors and health professionals here as well that are, they love the work they do, but the context stinks, just can't function, it's and the amount of, so I think there's a couple of things. One is like, the equation doesn't say you must have 100% of these things or your work is not working. It doesn't say you have to have 100%. What it does say is that bringing to awareness what are the criteria that matter most to you is an empowering way of making decisions and making adjustments. So depending on the severity of the conflict, if you like, between the environmental fit that helps them perform at their best and the environment that they've got, that then starts to be an exploratory question about what can I do to, first of all, is it killing me? Like that's, the extreme, right? Then what can I do to influence it, both perhaps for myself and for others? Third, how do I develop the resilience around this environment? And fourth, if I wanted to opt out, where might I be able to maximize a better environmental fit? And that might mean leaving the hospital environment, for example, or for a period. So I did work with in the States, actually, a medical professional. Well, he was an academic within the psychiatric area, and he moved into a pharmaceutical firm for a few years because of the kind of impact he wanted to have, that in academia was quite difficult. And then he contacted me a couple of years ago to tell me that he was moving back into clinical practice. So it's that series of choices idea as well. But fundamentally, if work isn't working for someone, particularly around the environmental space, there are only ever three choices. One is accept it completely and just embrace that, like, I've got these great things, but these things are a bit of a nightmare. Two, try and change it, influence, resilience, compromise, less hours, like, take care of yourself in some way. And the third is leave. In any context, actually, in careers, there's only those three. And that can be helpful because, as I said, too much choice is overwhelming, or too many variables is overwhelming. And so sitting alongside your client to really be able to take score about what is working, what isn't within the equational context, and is the balance on balance worth it? And is there anything I can do to nudge the mark? That's probably what I would do. But it's not for nothing that some industries are losing some fantastic people, because they just are very challenging environments in which to get the best out of people.
I love that. Thanks. Do you have the reference about the 5 choices?
I do. I can't remember. It's on the library somewhere, so I'll send it over. There is a book it was done really recently about choice theory in the last couple of years. But I'll send you the reference to that, for sure.
I live in a country where infinite choice is important, and it's sometimes hard to get beyond that.
Yeah, and it was written by an American. I heard about it on Radio 4 recently, but it's really important to know that like too much choice is a bad thing. It makes the brain malfunction, and what happens then also is that people either make a really impulsive choice, so they jump out of something without considered thought, or they make no choice. Yeah, but no choice is still a choice. It's still a strategy. It's a choice of strategy, which is I'm just going to ignore it for a bit longer, I'm going to kick the can down the road, or But we rarely get the best out of our people when they feel so overwhelmed that they can make no choice. So the equation is all about reducing down and distilling to the components that matter most, so they can quietly and confidently look at that criteria with you and make a really informed choice about what's next for them.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Fabulous. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for your questions on the chat, and for contributing. And also a huge thank you to Erica. Erica, are you going to send the I know the free sessions? You're going to send a link to?
Yes, I will. Thank you for reminding me, and thank you for those of you who said that might be interesting to you. I will do that. And I've just got a couple of things to close on as well. If I've got just one.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
1 more minute, which is just to recap. So the 3 key questions: how do you define success? What experience are you looking for? How can I, the business, how can I help you? Yeah. And remember that the equation itself divides into the 4, and to just anchor your conversations to those 4 can really help you to then have a really broad, lovely picture of who you're talking to and what matters to them. Try it out. Just try it out and drop me a line. Try one question in your context and share a little bit about what happens on the back of it. I'd love to hear more from you. And if you're interested in becoming accredited, we have a training. You can drop us a line and find out some more about it. It's in the slides, but we do a 3-day training that offers a number of development hours. Or get a copy of the book. You can get both of these on Amazon secondhand for not much, right? And the website has lots of free resources as well. So do drop me a line. I'm around on LinkedIn. I love talking to other coaches and practitioners about this work and how it might align with what you're doing. I'm endlessly curious about what other people are up to. And yeah, just keep in touch. I'll send you over some links for bits and bobs. And thank you very much again to CPD Standards for organising it. I've enjoyed it very, very much.
It's just been absolutely wonderful to have you, Erica. I mean, the insights, the tools, and all of the resources that you're able to share are so helpful. I hope I speak on behalf of most of our attendees here, or all of our attendees. And just fascinating. You know, I think we do, thinking about this 80,000 hours, particularly when you're a trainer, when you're a coach, when you're a mentor, what are you going to give where? And you know, I think that's, you know, really, really helpful. So thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was a privilege. Thank you.
Excellent. So just to remind everybody of the member event at the end of the month, Tuesday the 29th. We'd love to see you there if you can attend. And yeah, hopefully you had a chance to scan the QR code earlier on. If not, it should be on your screen now for you to scan. But Erica, thank you so much again for your time this morning. Wonderful presentation. And for everybody else, have a great day wherever you are. If it's raining, I hope the sunshine comes out soon. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Send in sunshine. Bye-bye.